for a lot of the stuff they put out, I hate to use the word, I can say it now because we're not on the radio stations this time because we're off of those now, crap. And that's what they're giving. I'll be honest with you, a Discovery. I sat and tried watching that. I couldn't get into it at all. And, and then the other Star Trek series, like the Enterprise, I really couldn't get into it because it was boring. It was boring.
Yeah, and I went in and pitched to that show. They asked me to come in and pitch, so I watched the pilot, and I thought, well, I like Scott. What was his name? He was on Quantum Leap. I like him, and I thought this takes place earlier than the original show, so I like that idea because you want to get rid of the convenience. You want to get to a period where they're out there all by themselves, and they can't call the cavalry just because they're in trouble. So you want to go back to where it's not such a convenient universe. And so I went in there with high hopes, and I watched it, and I just didn't see anything that hooked me. They brought me in for Voyager. I watched the pilot, and again, I just wasn't seeing anything that hooked me there. I thought it had potential.
It did at the start, and then somehow halfway through it lost. I don't know if you noticed that. The beginning when Voyager came out, it was good. I was hooked on it. But then like the second season, it's like lost its way.
Yeah. Well, the pilot had potential, and the first few episodes they showed me had potential, and I went in and pitched some stories, but I tried watching it a few more times, and it just wasn't holding me. I thought, look, I'll go back and watch the first show if I'm going to watch some science fiction, or I'll watch, a classic sci-fi movie. I'm not going to watch something just because it's science fiction. I'm not going to watch something just because it has Star Trek stamped on it. It's got to be good. It's got to engage me. And I'm sure some of your listeners are thinking, well, come on, the first show was kind of antique, or whatever. But it comes down to character. Roddenberry knew this, and he talked about it in his memos, that it comes down to flawed characters that all have internal conflict, and they have conflict with each other, and yet they're on a mission together, and they care about each other, but they disagree, and they're fighting. Well, by the time he was doing Next Generation, and I came in to pitch to him on that show, I'm looking at it, and everybody on the show likes everybody else. I didn't see any internal conflict. I didn't see any internal conflict in Picard at all. I saw plenty of internal conflict in Kirk and Spock and even McCoy, but I didn't see any in Picard. I didn't see any internal conflict in Riker. I didn't see, the closest they came was Data, but I didn't even see that as internal conflict. No. Roddenberry described him as Pinocchio, as a puppet that wants to grow up to be a real boy. Okay, so where's the conflict? I don't want to be a puppet anymore. Is that the best we can do? And so the thing is I came in to pitch to that show, and it was like, what do you do with these characters? You have to bring in Q, or you have to bring in somebody else to try to add some drama to the episode. Well, in the original Star Trek, they brought in these type of villains too, but there was like a great episode was the Corbomite maneuver where they were grabbed by that giant spaceship called what was it called? But had little Clint Howard as its commander.
Now, Clint Howard, tell everybody who his brother is.
Ron Howard. But the conflict was almost the entire episode took place on the bridge because they've been grabbed in the tractor beams from this giant ship, and they can't get away. They've tried everything, and they can't defend themselves against it. They can't pull away from it. And the alien says, you have 20 minutes, and we're going to destroy you. We've scanned your computers. You're a violent race. We want nothing to do with you, and we're better off if you don't exist, since now you have the ability to come into our territory. And so we're giving you 20 minutes to make your peace with yourselves, and we're going to blow you up. And it was intense because of the drama on the bridge, because all these flawed characters are trying to stay tough and trying to stay brave, but they're melting under the pressure, and they're doubting whether Kirk has made the right choices. Has he thought of everything? Has he tried everything? He's doubting himself. McCoy tries to challenge him, and he throws McCoy off the bridge. That's drama. Characters in an intense situation trying to not go at each other's throats. And when I looked at Next Generation, looked at the other shows, I didn't see characters not trying to go at each other's throats. I saw all these people getting along and having a nice little trip. And that's not drama. Shakespeare couldn't have written a good Next Generation or a Next Voyager. Now, there were good ones, but it took a lot of work to do it.
Oh, yeah. Hey, our time is up. Before we get out of here, tell people where they can find your book, where they can find the audio,
You guys got to hear this audio book. I haven't even heard it all, because I'm so busy trying to meet a deadline, but it is so good. Vic did such an amazing job on it. Go to thesearethevoyagesbooks.com. You've got my original 3 books. If you like to read, man, you're going to be reading. These are 600 pages each, and they are filled with these memos, but it's not just stuff. It takes you on the emotional journey of Star Trek. That comes from my screenwriting background. Is I take this real stuff and I focus on the drama that these people are going through trying to get this show made on budget, on deadline, against the hurdles that are being thrown up by the studio and NBC, and worrying about the ratings and everything else, even though the ratings aren't that bad, but they're not that good to where they're guaranteed a renewal. And so you feel the drama, you feel you're there with them going through this experience, reading their own words and their own memos and the interviews I did, but especially these memos that were written as it was happening. So it's a 3-book set. You read a chapter, you watch an episode. I tell people, don't be afraid. It's not 3 giant books. It's 80 little ones. You read a chapter, you watch an episode. But if you just don't like to read, check out this audiobook that Vic and a cast of 80 people did, including a lot of the original Star Trek people, where they're telling you the story. They're just reading everything that's in the book, the memos, the quotes. They're redoing it all. And you're hearing the voices, and you're just sitting there, and it's all happening around you. You can go to thesearethevoyagesbooks.com, jacobsbrownmediagroup.com. You'll never remember that. That's the publisher. You can go there, and you can get the books or the audiobook. You can read some excerpts. You can listen to some excerpts and check it out. And when I come back, Gary, let's get you some audio clips that you can play.
Oh, yeah.
Man, we can talk about it all day long, but I think your listeners need to hear a little taste of this.
Oh, yeah. And next time you're on, maybe we can do 3 hours. And what we can do is also, I'll get a hold of the stations and see, which ones might be willing to even carry it for the extra hour. But, I want to talk again a little bit about Robert Culp and then more about Star Trek, because tonight I'm seeing a whole bunch of people that love it just as much as you do and as much as I do.
Yeah. Yeah, it'd be great. And I'd love to talk to you about Robert Culp and I Spy. That was such an important show. And he was just such an artist. He was a writer. He was a director. He was a great actor. And he was like Roddenberry. He really had these amazing ethics, and he wanted to make statements with what he wrote. He was an Emmy-nominated writer, writing scripts for that show. And that show broke so many barriers in interracial casting. With Star Trek coming on 1 year later, it was the 1-2 punch, and shooting around the world, inventing the technology that we use now to do things. But also, if you remember the show, it challenged us because it didn't always show the United States in a great light. I mean, sometimes Kelly and Scotty would get an assignment to go kill somebody that they were sure did not need to be killed.
Oh, yeah.
And no other show on TV was doing those kind of stories.
Oh, I remember Kelly.
I was watching everything.
I was remembering Kelly really upset because he had to kill somebody he knew. It was a friend of his. And
great episode called A Cup of Kindness. Yeah. And man, that was a powerful episode. Shot in Hong Kong. And he was this was his teacher when he became a spy at spy school.
Right.
His teacher, and the teacher delivers a coded message to them. And he goes and decodes it, and he's telling Scotty, hey, get us some beers. We are going to have a good time. We're going to go out and show teacher the town and everything else. And he reads the coded message, and it says, this man, double agent, kill him. And that was the teaser. Oh, and that episode just went from there. Powerful. And yet the show would blend comedy and drama, but it was natural comedy. It was the type of comedy that two funny people have between themselves while they're in a moment of tension and danger. A brilliant show, and it's been out of it's been out of everybody's sight for too many years. You need to get that thing on DVD and watch that show and read my book and listen to us talk about it, because that was an important pioneering show on television.
I will say that like I told you before, when I first made contact with Robert Culp, he didn't like what I said. He had
What'd you say?
I can't even remember. I asked him some questions about I Spy because he had his website, and I don't know if he ran it or his son ran it or who ran it, but I messaged it. He came back and he was really sarcastic to me. And I go,
I'm
okay.
remembering this. Yeah, you told me this.
So then I sent him another email, and he came back more sarcastic. Then I sent kind of worded maybe a little bit different. And then all of a sudden, he realized, hey, maybe I'm not a dickhead, pardon my language. And we started, emailing back and forth. Now, this was maybe 4 or 5 months before he passed on. And it was getting to a point, like once or twice a week, I get an email from him. I send an email back. But he was talking about that movie that he worked years on, the screenplay.
Terry and the Pirates.
Going to be done in, I think, Hong Kong or somewhere. And he told me at that point he just recently went there to scout out, get the feeling of it and everything. The guy turned out to be a real warm and nice person. So he
was. But we all have two sides, and Roddenberry certainly had two sides, and we all do, and he did too. Bob Cope, just like Gene Roddenberry, he had been up against the system so many times in his life, and up against the uncreative element of the system, and the phoniness of Hollywood, where somebody will smile at you, and then suddenly you're not working, you're not getting a phone call, they're not taking your calls. And so I saw that in him. There was a side of him that carried those wounds. And when he thought somebody was messing with him, if he wasn't sure what they meant by what they said, he would kind of, he would let you know he was honest. He would let you know. You could hear it in his voice. But once he found out that, no, it's nothing going on there, he was actually a very warm and open and fun guy, and had terrific ethics, and I spent quite a lot of time with him during the writing of that book and the interviewing process and everything else, and I really admired him, and I was so sorry when he passed away. Yeah, we got to get into that. That would be fun.
Yeah, it was a big...
Gary, I want to say something before you go while some of your listeners are still with us. I know we're not on the network, but for your internet people, in the first hour, I called you Andrew a couple times, and I caught myself every time I did that. And I said, why didn't I just call him Andrew? And Gary Anderson. So you were becoming Andrew Garrison. And so if you heard that, I heard it too, and I caught that. I thought, why did they just call Gary Andrew? And your last name became your first name. You can call me Cush, or you can call me Cram. Call me Cram. It's Mark spelled backwards.
Okay, I'll remember that.
Say good night, Cram.
Well, again, I want to thank you for coming on tonight. It was really good having you on again. It was really good on, having Vic on. My show is normally paranormal and conspiracy, but I'm trying to get away a little bit into more things like, Star Trek and certain TV shows that it brought us into where we're at today. Again, a lot of people don't tie paranormal into like Star Trek. I do, because that's when the Star Trek series got the young people thinking.
It opened our minds to a lot of things. And I'll put the burden on you, Gary, and your listeners. If you want to talk, next time I'm on, if you want to talk some paranormal, just you bring it up. Because I can tell you some paranormal stories about Gene Roddenberry, about Star Trek. I also wrote a lot of scripts for a TV show called Beyond Belief, Fact or Fiction, that Jonathan Frakes was the host of on Fox Network. And we dealt with stories of paranormal that were believed to be true, that we had to craft into scripts and so forth. So you guys want to talk paranormal, I'm there with you.
Okay.
I lived in a haunted house once. I'm totally there with you, and I can tell you what Gene Roddenberry thought of it, not only about extraterrestrial life, but about paranormal activity. And there's some interesting stories there as well. So we can go into that realm.
Okay, Mark. Hey, I want to thank you for being on Night Dreams again.
It's been so much fun. Too much fun.
Yeah,
I'll look forward
of fun.
to the next time.
Okay, sir. Well, let's try again in about a month.
Okay, my friend. Bye-bye.
Okay, you take care. So anyway, we went over on the internet side. I just couldn't end it. I just couldn't end it at the top of the hour. I apologize. But we're going to have him back on in about a month from now. We're going to talk a little bit more about Star Trek. We're going to talk, I guess, about paranormal also. And we're going to talk about I Spy. What has it done for TV and movies? It's done a lot, and a lot of people don't even realize it. Anyway, tell your friends about Night Dreams Talk Radio. You can find us at www